All right, good afternoon and welcome to another Seven Hills Fellowship Tuesday devotional. For those of you who have been tuning in over the last couple of months, you know that what I've been doing in these Tuesday devotionals is unpacking how God began teaching me certain lessons after my diagnosis with cancer. And so moving forward, I'm going to be switching and changing the format just a bit. I'm going to be interviewing people from Seven Hills Fellowship and letting them tell you, the listeners, on this Tuesday devotional, letting them tell you how God strengthened and encouraged and how God was present for them in the midst of their times of suffering and trial. And so today, one of the first people that we're interviewing is going to be Rob Edens. So I'm going to let Rob introduce himself to you right now.
Hey, I'm Rob Edens. I'm the new youth director here at Seven Hills Fellowship. We moved here, my wife and I, Abigail, moved here in February from Lookout Mountain with our 6-month-old son, Campbell. I'm a Berry College graduate, class of 2014. Abby graduated in 2015, married since 2016, and are just glad to be here, glad to be back in Rome. Love this church, love this place.
Well, thanks, Rob, for being willing to go through this incredibly awkward Zoom interview. And this is not easy to do for those of you who have done it. But I know the people of the church, most of them don't know that you and Abby went through a period of struggle and trial just recently. So would you be willing to share with us a bit about that story?
Sure. So Campbell, our son, is 6 months old, and then he was born 6 weeks early. So we went to a regular doctor's appointment, right, just the normal checkup, and Abby's doctor, we were just having a normal conversation, looks up, says, "Hold that thought." And at that moment, we knew something was wrong. Abby's blood pressure was sky high, and she was diagnosed with preeclampsia. So we went from the doctor's office straight to the hospital to be monitored, to straight being transferred to the hospital downtown in Chattanooga. And the whole sequence of events went from, "Hey, you've got high blood pressure, we need to monitor you," to, "Hey, you're going to have a baby tonight," to, "Oh, well, maybe not quite yet," to, "You're getting released," to the next morning. So we went in on a Friday, and then on Monday morning, they walk in and say, "So you're having a baby today." And so Campbell was born 6 weeks early. He was 4 pounds, 13 ounces, which at the moment, I did not know how small that really was, thankfully. And in the delivery room was put on CPAP to help him breathe. And so we spent 3 weeks in the NICU. Most of it was just, he only had CPAP for an hour of his life, but the rest of the time was trying to get him to learn how to eat. He was on a feeding tube, IVs, machines hooked up. Not a great way to enter into fatherhood for sure. And the first week, Abby was still in the hospital as well. I was trying to get her blood pressure managed and some of the complications for pregnancy taken care of. So it was definitely a hard and trying time.
Yeah, so I can only imagine that, being a new father, being a relatively new husband, having a child that was born 6 months premature, walking in and seeing Campbell hooked up to all of these machines, all the while Abby is also in the hospital. How difficult was that time for you?
Oh, it was torturous. You're torn between, do I take care of my wife or do I take care of my son? You don't really know where the right place to be is. And it's exhausting. I think the worst place to get rest is the hospital. And so going from sleeping on a couch, the pull-out couch in the hospital, to walking who knows how far between rooms and making sure, trying to take care of everybody, it's overwhelming. And a lot of fear involved.
Yeah. So obviously part of what we're doing here is we're trying to hear from people about how God was really present with them, for them in the midst of their time of suffering. And so for you in particular, how was it that God encouraged you and strengthened you in the midst of all of these different things going on?
Well, ever since we found out we were pregnant, I began praying for Campbell, and praying over him, and praying that he would know the Lord, even in the womb, before he was actually born. So I had a lot of hope and confidence that the Lord was working in his heart. But also we had been praying Psalm 91 over him again before he was born in the NICU, and we're still praying for him today. The same psalm over him. And there's a couple verses that really stick out to me in Psalm 91. The psalm starts, it says, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust." It goes on to say that because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge, no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. Just knowing that, like, I am abiding, I'm resting in the shadow of the Almighty. That Abby is abiding, she's resting in the shadow of the Almighty, and having hope and faith that the Lord is working in Campbell's heart, that He is bringing them into His fold, and that, again, He's resting in the shadow of the Almighty. That's really a powerful imagery of, like, there's shelter there, there's rest here. He is your refuge, He's your strength. And it's just really empowering in those moments of, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I can drive to the hospital one more day. I don't know how I can see my son struggle to eat one more day, or go between my wife and my son torn one more day. But to know that the Lord is your refuge, like He was protecting us and guarding us, sustaining us, and enabling us to face the challenges in those moments.
Yeah, for people who have never been in the situation of seeing a loved one suffer, your wife, and in this case, your son, at the same exact time, that just, you just can't understand how hard that is. But it sounds like Psalm 91 was really a source of hope for you. As you read through and read through Psalm 91, what do those verses communicate to you about how God sees you and about how God sees Campbell?
It's just a loving Father. The psalm goes on, and it's kind of speaking from God's perspective at the end. It says, "Because He holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him. I will protect him because He knows my name. When He calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation." Just like the Lord is hearing these cries, He's with us in the muck and the mud, and He's there. He's present, and that He is our salvation. Like, it's not my salvation; it's the Lord's salvation. And just, there's so much hope in that, that was encouraging in that season. It's encouraging now as I'm walking through fatherhood and don't know what I'm doing, to know that, like, the Lord is my salvation and the Lord is Campbell's salvation. It's so freeing and so hopeful.
Awesome. Well, man, thank you so much for sharing this little bit of the story. I'm sure there's a lot more. And so maybe we can come back and have a couple more Zoom interviews where we unpack some more of how God was present with you and with Abby in the midst of all that. And we'd love to get Abby on. I'd love to hear her side of all of this as well. But thank you so much for being willing to share part of what God was doing with you and through you and in you as you were watching your little son go through this. And so thank you so much for being willing to share all of that.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please make sure to talk with Rob, and I'm sure he's got many other things he'd love to share with you about himself and about Abby and about Mr. Campbell and what God has been teaching them. So thanks again for everything. And we will see you guys next Tuesday.